solutions. I saw on Facebook on one of the Buffini pages, someone was saying, "Oh no, not another assumptions class," and they were talking about all the frustration of trying to get an assumption through, and they were absolutely right. It is frustrating, and it can be a real tumultuous type of situation. This Zoom call is a bit different, though. This isn't just another assumptions class. This is an assumption solutions class, an assumption solution Zoom call, where we can talk about ways that we can navigate through the system and find advocacy in the process. So we're not only going to learn about assumptions, but we're going to learn about some of the best ways to navigate through them. This is about solutions today. So I'd like to introduce Craig O'Boyle. He's in Colorado Springs, as I am as well. Ryan Yonkey's in Colorado Springs. Got a few folks from here on the call. And this is being recorded. So if you know anyone that missed today, this is going to be available to them. We want to help as many agents as we can. So Craig, I'll let you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do and about assumptions. Take it away, sir.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, everybody. As John mentioned, I'm a Colorado Springs local, like him. I'm like many of you, though, I am a realtor. I've been a realtor in Colorado Springs since I was a 19-year-old kid. I basically got licensed in October of 1995 because I was in training for the United States Army, and they kept me so long in my training. I was in a reserve unit, and my split option kept me so long for my skills training. I couldn't start college. I had a free semester. My dad had been in real estate out here, and he was like, "Well, you could get a license." Well, and back then it was like 12 days of school, and then you were licensed. It wasn't as complicated as now, and so I got in early on, and I ended up falling in love with the business, worked it all the way through college. And like many of you, I've spent a lot of time sitting at closing tables with military folks closing, and the topic of the assumable nature of the deed of trust would always come up at closing tables. And I would always say, if we ever find ourselves in a rising rate climate, you're going to have a special asset that's unique to you versus anybody that doesn't have this kind of loan. What I didn't realize is that it would take upwards of 25 years to find ourselves from a falling rate climate to a rapidly rising rate climate. And well, 22 comes along and bam, rates start to jump. And so I went to a longtime business partner of mine who owns one of the biggest title companies in our area. And I said, "Hey, there's an opportunity here to help people navigate the assumption process." And I wanted to adapt a model that he created in the financial crisis in 2008, which was a company called Short Sale Solutions, which helped people, agents specifically, navigate the short sale process. And so we created in 2022 Assumption Solutions to navigate the assumption process. Initially, when I started this, though, I thought I'd be kind of working and educating the public. And after about a couple of months of doing it, it became very clear that I really needed to work with the real estate agent community in terms of education, because we are the driving force behind 9 out of 10 transactions in the United States. And clients are going to rely on us to figure out how to get through it. What we wanted to position Assumption Solutions as, though, is kind of that trusted service provider that we all use as realtors when we need to outsource something that we're not experts in. Many of you could probably, like me, do your client's home inspection, but is that a good idea? I certainly don't want the liability. I don't want to become the expert in all things construction. And so Assumption Solutions is designed to be like that for you, right? We're here to basically, when you get involved in a transaction, to help you navigate it to success without you or your clients having to figure out everything to do. Our role is very similar to many of you who probably use a transaction coordinator, right? Your job as a realtor is to get out there, to show homes, to list homes, to contact clients, to kind of generate that next lead, to manage problems when they appear and just get the deal to the finish line, and then sort of let the messy in the middle pieces that you can delegate out. And that's what we're here to do. So I don't know if I can, am I able to share my screen, John? It looks like I am. What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit about the value of a mortgage assumption, and then talk about how we help you get through that process. So I'm going to share a little PowerPoint I have here. Give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Okay. All right. So what this is just the reason I like to share this. This is eye-popping information, and I think is great for you to get in front of your clients who would benefit from this from either a seller's perspective as a buyer or a buyer's perspective. Because for sellers, this is the potential to sell your home faster or for more money in this climate. And for buyers, this is your potential to save money. So it's important to understand the numbers that make an assumption really valuable. And it's kind of my favorite thing to go over because I'm kind of a number nerd here. So first we'll start with comparing payments. We'll talk about a $400,000 loan at a 7% interest rate, and the fact that that equals a monthly payment of $2,661. Right? And a $400,000 loan at a 2.75% interest rate equals a monthly payment of $1,633. That equals a monthly savings of over $1,000 in a month, $1,028, which equals an annual savings in your payment of over $12,300. That's the top line number that really gets people interested in an assumption. You know, Brian has always said at Turning Points, and I mean that he doesn't have Turning Points anymore, so I'm dating myself, but all his stuff, you know, people live with the payment, not the price, right? So when you can show people the payment savings, this is huge numbers, right? Now let's talk about the difference in purchasing power that the interest rate rise has created since 2022, right? So if you start with that monthly payment of $1,633, that's equal to a $400,000 loan at 2.75, obviously, or a $245,500 loan at 7%, right? That's equal to a decrease in purchasing power of over $154,000 to keep that same payment. That's a 61.4% reduction in purchasing power. And so that is the affordability crunch that everybody is seeing, right? The numbers that I'm going to go over next are the numbers that most people don't pay attention to, but they really get me excited. And this is more involving the amortization savings over time, right? So interest saved over time. So if you get total interest paid on a $400,000 loan over 30 years is over $558,000 at 7%. That's just the interest, right? Or if you have that 2.75% loan, the interest paid over 30 years is $187,800 and change, right? So the difference in interest paid over 30 years between those two rates is the delta is over $370,000 just with the amount of rise in the interest rate. That's a huge number, right? So let's say when you point that out to somebody over time, right? And they're like, okay, wow, that's a ton of savings. And that makes me, between the payment savings and the amount of interest I'm not going to pay over 30 years, let's say I want to do an assumption, right? And so most assumptions happen, you know, 2-3 years after those super low rates were initiated, because the lowest rates were between March of 2020 and March of 2022. So let's say they assume a loan that's now 3 years old, right? Well, that seller of that home in that first 3 years at that 2.7 rate, they paid $31,938 in interest already on that loan. So somebody's going to assume it with now a 27-year term, and they're going to keep it through the life of the loan, let's just say. Their total savings and interest that they will realize by doing that assumption, it's actually greater than the amount of the loan that they are assuming. It's 402,106, right? So that gets me excited. I love showing this. I love showing these numbers because financially savvy people in the long term will find these attractive for a long time. So this assumption market to me has legs. And I'm going to show you, even if we see maybe some reduction in rates, why these are going to be attractive for a long time, because I'm actually going to do a next example on a deal that we have processed. And this was a deal that was older. It wasn't the most recent deal. So this was a deal. There was a $500,000 loan originated at almost 5.3% in 2009, which had a monthly payment of $2,773, right? The loan had been paid down over the first 15 years to $358,759. So that was the balance that was being offered for assumption, right? The home sale price was over $900,000, which left an assumption gap, the difference between the loan and the price that you're buying the home for, of over $540,000. The buyer of this home had sold a home in Hawaii, was coming to Colorado Springs, and so he had a large down payment to bring, right? So he assumed that loan. The interest paid by the seller over the first 15 years was over $336,000. And the remaining interest to be paid for the remaining 15-year term of that loan was only $164,000 total, right? So massive savings just because the loan was older. And so it's huge benefit to these deals, even if you're not getting the lowest interest rate, which obviously if you're assuming one from 2020 to 2022, you're going to get that low interest rate. But just by being older, doing an assumption can save you tons and tons of money over time. So, all right, I'm going to take that off of share, if I can figure out how. And I'll talk a little bit about our role as Assumption Solutions. So we usually come on board when a contract is put together between a buyer and seller. I will give a little caveat here. We have started a program where if somebody wants to have their buyer vetted to figure out what kind of loan can they assume, we do have a program like that. But let's say in a normal deal, you've got a listing or you've got a buyer, you create a contract and you're like, okay, how do we get this thing to the finish line? Our role is we will engage both buyer and seller, and we will work the transaction directly with them and the servicer to get them approved and closed, right? We, of course, as a company, we charge a fee to be in business. We charge a $750 fee per side to basically act in what we do. But at engagement, we only charge a $50 fee per side, and we don't charge anything else unless the assumption is approved and cleared to close by the servicer. Then we bill out our remaining $700 per side directly to the clients, right? Now, another caveat there, it's 9 out of 10 deals, it's split. Seller pays their piece, buyer pays their piece, but sometimes the buyer pays our fee, sometimes the seller pays our fee, and sometimes agents are involved in paying the fee. You just have to direct us what you want to do. But once we're engaged, what our role is, number one, is we are going to vet the transaction to ensure it's going to have a high likelihood to close and be successful. The servicer is ultimately going to be the one who decides, is this approved or not? But for them to give you any kind of yay or nay, thumbs up or thumbs down, it can take weeks to months, depending on who it is, because the timeline of an assumption is generally longer than getting a new loan. We like to say an average timeline is somewhere between 70 and 90 days. A slow timeline is somewhere between 90 and 120, sometimes 120 plus. And a fast timeline is somewhere between 45 days and 60 days. And your timeline varies depending on who your servicer is. So because of that lengthy timeline, if you're working with a seller or even a buyer and you don't want to be in a contract forever before they give you, oh, this isn't going to work, we will be able to tell you within days of engagement whether the deal is going to work, because we're going to vet the transaction, because we do so many of these. I mean, at any given moment, we're doing 70 plus of these, that we know the guidelines inside and out, right? So we're going to save you from deals that you shouldn't stay in. We don't use the word qualify because we don't offer financing. We're only vetting the transaction and basically saying, hey, we don't think we can get this done. We're going to disengage. If we disengage, that might be a good signal that you don't want to stay engaged. We recently, matter of fact, yesterday, we had a deal where we told all parties within the first week, we don't think this deal is going to work. And for some reason, 3 of the parties involved didn't believe us and they wanted to try it anyway. And we said, okay, we'll keep working it. It ultimately went all the way to VA, who doesn't usually have to review these, and they killed it just like we said it would. They chose to go that route. But if you listen to us and you say, hey, they're disengaging, we should probably terminate this deal, we'll save you a lot of headaches. Once we get through the vetting process, we are then going to assist in the submission of the assumption package to the servicer. And there's all different ways and methodologies that the servicers do that, right? Some, believe it or not, they only accept them via fax, some only via mail, some email, some phone interview, but we're going to assist in that. The reason that this is important is when you do the submission, if you do it incorrectly or you make errors, they're going to ultimately, when they finally do review it, they're going to kick it out and you're going to have to resubmit. And you're going to artificially lengthen the time that it's going to take to get this closed. So we're there to keep you from making unforced errors in the submission so that you don't turn what should be a 45, 60, 75-day deal into a 90, 120 plus deal because of that. So that's our role there. And then once the submission is done, we have a standardized follow-up plan, basically on a weekly basis, to try and keep positive pressure and keep the servicer moving the file forward. The unfortunate truth about assumptions is you can only move as fast as the servicer's systems will allow. And quite frankly, this is blowing up in the marketplace. Sometimes we're getting 20 plus deals in a week on this. And some of the servicers who were consistently hitting 60 days are starting to get to 75 to 90 just because they're so backed up. Because the servicers themselves, they don't love doing this. It's not a profit center for them. They're just sort of required to do it. And so having enough staff, having enough resources, they can't charge much to do this at all. It's a big challenge for them right now. And so, one of the bigger services we've dealt with, we have inside contacts with, we were just talking about it yesterday, like they're literally taking almost 3 days to respond to our emails now, when they were almost instantaneously responding. And we are starting to see that they're getting beyond their 60-day time frame. So, everybody has to be prepared in assumption for the timeline. It's key for agents when they're working on a deal and putting it together to understand nobody's going to be able to guarantee you your timeline. The servicers themselves don't care what your contract says. They're only going to go as fast as their systems allow. But having somebody who does this all the time, keep you out of bad deals, keep your deals moving forward in the right way to keep unforced errors out of it, will definitely get you that shortest timeline. But when you're talking to clients, what is a drop dead, right? If they have to be out of that house in 30 days, it may not mean that the home needs to close. Maybe you need to negotiate in a buyer rent to close. Once they've passed our vetting and passed the inspection things that relate to the property, it's very unlikely, unless they lose their job, that they're not going to get approved. They just got to go through the process, right? So we see that quite a bit. If they absolutely need to have that money from the sale in 30 days, it might be tough to do an assumption. So those are the discussions that are very important from the real estate side. So Um, Let me see if I think that's, by and large what I wanted to cover, John, as far as making this more of a shorter format. I'm sure people have questions if we want to just go that route from now.
We're a small enough group on this call that actually I think we can unmute and just ask questions rather than raise hands. So, would somebody like to start? I know I have some questions, but I'd like for you to go first if you have one.
I do
I've
see
got
some.
one. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Have you found any solutions for the gap? Sometimes the gap between the loan and the purchase price for people to be able to finance that or to deal with that?
Yeah, so we get that question more than any other question out there. The interesting thing is all the way through this, being that we've kind of been one of the leaders in this space since 2022, I get so many small and large entities reaching out to me about that exactly. Right now, we have processed 0 deals where the gap has not been paid in cash, right? Part of the biggest challenge, I think, is the government or entities are going to sort of need to kind of put their foot down and say, this is what's allowed and this is what's not. Because what we have consistently been told is, like, if anybody wants to do any kind of secondary financing, the VA wants to see that secondary financing as assumable. And I'm not aware of any secondary in existence that is assumable yet. I do know of some large entities that are trying to create products in this space because the desire to monetize this is high for lenders, right? They initially, didn't want to do these at all, weren't interested in being involved, and in some cases were telling people this isn't assumable when it was. There was a lot of fighting we had to do up front, but now they all kind of understand. The VA's kind of put their foot down. You have to process these. But so those lenders and those organizations, they're looking for paths to profitability. I think part of the holdup is that assumption thing. Another part of the holdup is probably a little bit of reluctance to create second positions when we've kind of been in economic instability a little bit, like where ultimately is the housing market going? A lot of those lenders have memories of the 2008 crisis when second mortgage holders were getting wiped out across the board. And so, but we do believe it's coming. We teach classes all the time where, initially when we were teaching them, there was a lot of servicers who are hard no on any secondary financing. And some of the bigger ones have started to say, okay, we'll allow secondary financing up to 90% LTV, cumulative LTV. And then the issue became about, oh, wait, that's got to be assumable. So still, as of yet, we have seen no gap mortgage financing unless somebody has done some kind of financing on something else they own. Like they've got a house that's a rental and they do a line of credit on that to cover the gap, but it's not tied to the house they're buying.
Craig, this is a group of seasoned agents you have in front of you right here, but for the recording and the folks that may be watching this, talk about the types of loans that are assumable and who can assume them.
So FHA and VA both carry the assumption clause, qualifying assumption clause. The products obviously are designed for owner occupants. FHA is for sure owner occupant only, but VA has started to go to some non-owner occupants, but that's servicer dependent. And if they are going to allow a non-owner occupant, the entitlement would have to remain that the veteran used to get that loan. Yeah, because a VA loan, just for clarification, it can be assumed by both a veteran and not a veteran alike. However, if it goes to non-veteran, the entitlement stays with the loan that was used. Doesn't mean they can't get another VA loan. It depends on how much of that entitlement was used. It would be reduced. But I would say, truthfully, about 3 in 10 deals we process go veteran to non-veteran. It depends on the market in the country, I think. You know, when we see a VA loan transfer where there's not as many veterans or not as much military presence in the marketplace, it seems to be a higher likelihood that a non-veteran wants to assume that deal. We aren't seeing a ton of investors do the assumptions yet because, like I said, still it kind of depends on the servicer if they want to allow it. But yeah, that's primarily what we're seeing as far as who's doing these deals. Now, I will say the people that are doing these deals, because our heads of processing are long-term lenders, which is a big benefit. I mean, I don't actually touch the processing side of what we do because I'm a realtor, and like most realtors, I know enough about lending to be dangerous. So we use lenders to do our processing, and they are saying that the people doing these deals tend to be the most qualified people that they have ever dealt with. Very high credit scores. You know, a lot of time the average gap we're seeing filled is over $50,000. The highest gap we've seen filled was over $1 million on a $2 million home sale in Scottsdale. So, you know, this isn't the people that are doing these they tend not to be your first time home buying, lower ranking military personnel, you know, who generally need to take advantage of the 0 down new VA loan. This tends to be the people who are move up or relocating and have sold something, who have significant assets. We do see a number of people helping younger people do this with gifts to cover the gap, because that is a great way to help that next generation who don't have the assets but want to buy a home, but the affordability crunch is really tight on them. So we see a lot of that going on. At the end of the day, however the gap is filled, it has to be sourced. So, you know, all that money's got to be accounted for just like it does in any typical new loan. So.
Hey, Craig, I know when I jumped on your other call that you had a while back, you had shared that there's a website that has been capturing all of the homes that would be eligible, right? Was that assumption.com or something?
You know what? Yeah, why don't let me see if I could pull that up real quick. So,
and I guess my
screen
question, my follow-up question then would be, is that a great way to start if you're like, I am interested in purchasing one. And so there's no time crunch or anything like that. And we do have that ability to make up the gap. I'm just curious, you know, step one, would you say it's go to this website and begin looking at properties, or what?
No, I think this website particularly is a little bit better. I mean, it's not a bad resource for realtors, but I think it's actually something that the public is using. I reference this website because the screen is shared, correct? You can see it?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's called assumable.io. The guys that created it consulted with me in late 2022 to mid 2023 about creating it. They're tech guys. I'm not a tech guy. I did not want to, I thought about this space, but it was above my pay grade, right? So I was like, okay, because we get all these people reaching out to us. That was really interesting to go through. So they're like, okay, we want to become the Zillow of assumable searching. But how do we monetize it, right? And, you know, I have no love for Zillow, but I mean, I'm like, well, you know, Zillow's methodology is basically generating income from people like us. You know, my thing to them was, though, like, there's enough agents who are fed up with companies that want to charge you a monthly fee or charge you some kind of fee for being a member. So they went the route of becoming a referral fee type site, right? So their goal is to send clients looking for things to agents around the country and collect referral fee based out of that. Now, I will say that they do refer deals to us, but it's a better deal if you come direct to me. So, but I like them. It's a great site. So like if you click on here, I'm just going to do it real quick, just so you can see, right? It's Colorado Springs is defaulted in here. It's going to, you can do this anywhere in the nation. You type in your location in the search bar and it's going to put all these dots. These are supposed to be homes in that marketplace that carry an assumable note and are for sale. That doesn't mean they're being marketed as assumable, because I've gone through this with agents around the country, and the neat thing is they'll pull them up in their own MLS and look at what them to compare what they're seeing on here. And there are, I did one in Raleigh, and the agent pulled it up, and it was a property in a hot market that had been the market for like 150 days and done 4 price reductions, but they never marketed the assumable nature of the note. And I'm like, oh, that's killing me, because if I can teach agents to market it, you just create that extra buyer pool when you're marketing these homes. So, but for you, Gene, as an agent, I think obviously the best thing to do is start in your MLS, right? To start to find the fields. Does your MLS have fields for searchability? Now, Colorado Springs here, because we have done so many classes, because my partner owns this title company, and all the agents from all the different companies tend to come to classes for education there, that we have made Colorado Springs one of the most robust markets in the United States for this. All the agents now seem to know what to do when they get an assumable as far as marketing it properly and how to find them for buyers. So our MLS systems has functionality for this to search it. So I think that's a big piece. This can be a supplement to you. I think it's good to be aware of this, because you're just like our clients go to Zillow or Realtor.com or anything else to search, even though maybe we have built them an MLS search. They may be going to sites like this. And this is not the only one out there. There are other ones out there that are growing. I happen to like these guys. I think they have a good platform and they have a good place behind it. The interesting thing about it is we just got approval on one of the owners of this site doing an assumption himself. So, yeah, for hunting them, you know, the key is I think the base level key is your MLS. And then are there ways to even look at properties that you might like, but aren't being marketed as assumable in your MLS, but that carry an FHA or VA loan? In our Colorado Springs MLS, I can click on any active listing, hit history, and I can scroll down and I can see the last loans financed and what they were. I did a video that's on our website that showed how to do that for our local agents, which our website at assumptionsolutions.com has great videos, has entire classes recorded that are good for agents, that are good for their clients to watch, and under the real estate agents tab. So does that answer all your question?
Yeah, I'm not aware of our MLS having that search capability, but it's possible it is. I just haven't checked it out, but I will.
What I find is the biggest thing is how much of your market is familiar with this, how much of your agent market locally is familiar. You know, once you hit critical mass with agents understanding this is why I always tell people, to everybody here, if you want a class for your MLS or your local company or whatever, I love to do them, because the more agents to know about it, just the more robust the market is.
Cool. Well, what about the homes that aren't in the MLS, right? They're not marketed at all, but you want to, you know, maybe you like that neighborhood and you want to try to just canvas the area. Is that going through your title rep at that point?
Yeah, so I teach that there's a couple of ways to do it. Obviously, a title rep. We used the title resources in creating this company. We looked in Colorado Springs how many VA loans were financed or refinanced between March of 2020 and March of 2022. And in one county, we had 14,000 loans that carry a rate below 3.5%, right? It's not a small market across the country. Anywhere in the United States, FHA and VA make up about 30 to 35% of the market. So yes, you can go to title companies to do that. But I think most MLSs, you can search past sales by sale type, right? Like what financing was done. Our MLS is required to put what type of financing was used when it closes. and that's a searchable feature, right? So that's a great place to do it as well without having to pay anybody because you're already paying for the data. And then, you know, I mean, connecting with your past client database. I mean, who did you sell a home for that used the VA? It's great to get this information out to them so that they know if they want to move, they've got a special asset to sell, that then maybe they could turn around and still find another home with a low rate. So.
Thanks.
My friend Beth has her hand up. Hey, Beth, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks, John. Craig, thank you for doing this today. I am not versed at all with assumable mortgages. I'm not seeing that many yet in our marketplace. I've seen a few advertised like in the Williamsburg area. That's closer to like Fort Eustis, and Langley Air Force. And my question is, I primarily handle listings, so I'm always looking out for my seller's best interest. In terms of the entitlement that gets absorbed from them when someone assumes their mortgage, how does the seller find out their remaining entitlement? Do they have to go directly to the VA? Do they go to their lender to figure that out?
We will walk them through that, right? So if it goes veteran to veteran and the veteran buying has sufficient entitlement, it can swap, meaning the new buyer's entitlement goes on that loan and the old buyer's entitlement is fully released. They're always fully released from liability. They're no longer liable for that loan. That's just a function of an assumption, right? But if they go veteran to veteran, we will check that out. Now, one of the most important things for having us do this, a lot of times people want to do that swap. And one of the first things we check is sufficient entitlement in place from the buyer to do that? Because unlike new loans, it's got to be in place. There's no way to like get extra entitlement or do anything, because we have seen deals fall apart where the entitlement was short by $200, right? Because there's no way to do a swap. No, it's got to be there. So we check that. And believe it or not, a lot of the servicers, if you're doing this on their own, they almost don't check for entitlement swapping until you're right before closing. We have had so many people come out of us where they're like, oh, this deal was ready to go, but there's an issue with the entitlement. Can you help us? And we're like, well, we could have kept you out of that deal in the first week, and they're 90 days in, right? And so now the question is, when they're doing a non-entitlement swap sale and the entitlement's going to set, we will be able to help them figure out the calculations for what they'll have remaining to use it. Because part of it is, where do they plan to buy? Like, it's not just a black and white thing. Like, there's all kinds of things to do it. I'm not going to claim to be an expert in that. That's something Amy and my processors will be doing when you know what kind of deal you have, right? And so, part of it is vetting, and yes, we're vetting, can they complete the deal? But part of the vetting process is we're giving you information on that kind of stuff, Beth, so that, the seller might have to make a decision. Oh, this isn't going to allow me to follow through with my plan. I'm not going to keep the deal going. Because, truthfully, the Colorado contract is very good. I don't know about we do a lot of business actually in Virginia, because we do this in all 50 states. But the Colorado contract is very good in its dates that were built into it with regards to assumption. And one of those, you have the right to, as a seller, to basically vet a bunch of credit things with regards to the buyer. And this is kind of one of those things that falls into that, like determining, do they meet the requirements for what the seller is going to be needing to do? And so you could build into your contract, if you don't have that standard like we do, something that says, within the first 10 days, the seller has the right to determine, is the buyer truly creditworthy? Can the entitlement be swapped, and stuff like that? you know, the last deadline in any contract that really is going to matter is what we have in our contract. Is called a loan transfer approval deadline. That's the deadline by which the servicer says, yes, this can be assumed you're clear to close. You know, we recommend, unless you know, we can check the servicer's average timeline, but we recommend you put that somewhere between 60 and 90 days, right? And then you usually can close relatively quickly after that. We are starting to see some of the closing departments for the servicers get a little bit backed up. So it used to be you get clear to close from the servicer and you're closing within 7 days, right? Now we're saying it could take a week, 2 weeks or more, depending on how fast they can issue all the things that need to be issued to the title company for closing, things like prorations on escrow accounts and those kinds of things. So did I answer everything for you?
Thank you. I think so. My other thought, though, is, are there any sort of other disadvantages to the veteran for potentially selling their home through an assumable mortgage? Like if a buyer purchased a house and then the buyer doesn't make the payments, the house gets foreclosed on.
If they leave their entitlement, it will permanently affect their entitlement. Just like if they got in foreclosed on, it would permanently affect their entitlement. If it
Right.
swaps, there are liability. There is no ability for the servicer to come to them. There's no liability left on them. Right now, if the entitlement swapped, it's the entitlement affected in a future foreclosure is on that new buyer, right? But like I said, we are seeing that the people doing these tend to be extremely well qualified, extremely financially savvy people with significant assets. And,
Okay.
you know, I think now that we're in this climate of high rates, people realize the absolute complete of gold that these low rate loans represent. So I think people would do anything and everything to keep these for the long term. You know, I think people that assume these loans, even if they decide to move the home, I think the likelihood of them turning them to rentals is really high. Right. And like keeping this loan in for the next 25, 30 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Are you gonna send us those slides?
I do have all, so my, I can send out a graphic of the slide I went to. I do have an entire presentation that's like, class presentation that's like another 20 slides long. So if you shoot me an email, I'll put my email in the chat here.
And I've got a graphic coming up with your email as well. If it's the info email.
I'll put my direct personal email in here. So
great.
it's just Craig@AssumptionSolutions.com. So I can send these out in infographics that you could actually use in marketing. You know, half of my normal class, I actually teach about getting more clients, getting more sellers, and then marketing properties. And a lot of that is talking about get this information that I had in that infographic out to the public. And so I have little infographics I can send to anybody who wants them on this. I can even, if you're interested, like in gaming a personal listing that you have, like how do I market this listing, right? Like how do I show the comparison between what this listing has versus if they got new financing? I can show people how to do that because I think that is the differentiator in your marketing when you get these listings. I actually think the best thing to be with regards to assumptions, it's great to have a buyer. We all love having a buyer, but getting a listing that's got an assumable loan, I think is true gold, because not only are you have the potential of selling it to a cash buyer or a new loan buyer, but you have this whole other marketplace that now is hunting it. I mean, they're going to sites like assumable.io and hunting these hard, right? And we are seeing many agents double end deals because people come direct to them who are just looking for these all over the country, right? And so I think being a listing agent on Assumable is great. At the end of the day, it just increases your odds of a sale, which whether it's assumption or cash, I'll take a sale. Sale's a sale for me. So any other questions?
Craig, we have some great lenders on this call. And I guess my question would be this. I mean, do you work with any lender through this process? Or let's say there's a market that has a heavy military presence and you know of lenders that you've worked with in the past. Do you recommend and refer out those lenders?
So, you know, obviously my internal processing team, they are lenders, right?
Okay.
So, but they're not lenders in all 50 states, right? And sometimes what we see is, you know, the house is the house for the buyer. And they're going to buy that house whether they assume it or they get a new loan, right? And so we have seen deals where someone says, yeah, I would like to go through the assumption. That's ideal for me. But maybe there's a timing issue that's not going to work. Maybe there is, maybe there's a entitlement issue that can come up or something like that. I don't know. And so they might run a concurrent potential new loan, right? Obviously, you know, we're happy to refer anybody anywhere when, you know, that's not something that we're doing internally. We can't do that in all 50 states like we can this. But I have a lot of lenders across the nation who, you know, they get questions about this all the time, but they don't work in this field, and they actually refer a lot of clients and deals to us. And, you know, we're happy to tell their clients, look, you know, yes, this is what you can do, but if you can't find it, or if it's not in your marketplace, you're going to need to get a new loan. If you need to move, you need to move, right? And so go back to your lender and keep this process going on that front, because you've got to buy a home. So, you know, there's not a ton of role for a mortgage lender in what we do. They're just, you know, ultimately there's no financing being issued in general, unless they go out and get a second on another property to cover the gap. You know, that's something that can be referred out for sure. But I've done a lot of our classes actually with lenders for their realtor client base, because, you know, it's just another piece of value that they're bringing to people. So.
Awesome. Any other questions?
All right.
Well, let's show you this. Hopefully this is on your screen, or whoa, there he is. There's can you guys see that? Craig's information there. And again, he shared his personal email with you there, craig@assumptionsolutions.com. But there's Craig's information. I have a feeling he's very easy to find. If you lose this information, then just contact me and I will have it. But Craig's made it very easy to find him, which is a good thing in business. Craig, thank you so much for being here, for answering our questions. There may be other questions. I'm sure it'll be okay if we reach out to you, if that's the case, or someone watching the video recording.
Anytime. I'm a realtor just like you guys. So, you know, I kind of understand the hectic nature of what we do. And we're here to make you look good, you know, and just be a team member that you use when you need us. So
awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for being here. Remember our meeting in August. Oh gosh, doesn't seem real, does it? Will be the second Monday of the month. And we'll see you all guys there. And I will put this recording on the Bambi's page as well, in case you want to share it with anyone. And for those that couldn't make it today. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Everybody. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.